My name is Jack Gallagher. I'm 45 years old and I'm a stand-up comic. I've been married to the same woman for 18 years. Like most people together that amount of time, we have children. I have two sons. I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. I'm 45. I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. We decided to wait. We thought it'd be a good idea to wait. Seemed like a good idea while we were waiting. Now it seems like a really crappy idea. I've recently realized that I'm going to spend my golden years teaching people to drive, basically. But like most people, having children changed my life. I think it changed my life more dramatically than most people because of the way I was living before I had children. This was the final event in my life that made me realize I had to grow up. And my son was born when I was 38. So it took me a very long time to grow up. But it changed the way I deal with everything, as you'll see. My family, my mom and dad, my brother, my sisters, my wife, my career, my contemporaries, everything I do on a daily basis now. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here, so let's just start at the beginning. That's me. That one. I was born on August 15th, 1953 in Fall River, Massachusetts. I was the fourth of 5 kids born to John and Helen Gallagher. That's me on my dad's lap. I don't think I look enough like my dad at this point in my life. It's kind of spooky, isn't it? I was the fourth of 5 kids, but I was the first male child born into an Irish Catholic family from Boston. I don't know if you realize it or not, but that's an excellent birth position. These are my 3 older sisters. Their job was to get me whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted it. My sister Sharon with the big moon face. Sharon, my sister Marcia, my oldest sister Donna, and that's me looking like somebody's going to poke me in the ass with a hot stick any second. I was a very nervous child. My parents tell me all the time how nervous I was. They can't believe I do what I do for a living because I was so nervous. And I remember being incredibly shy as a child. I couldn't look people in the face until I was about 9 years old. I was afraid of the dark, the boogeyman, older kids, you name it, I was nervous about it. Nervous or not, I appear to have been blessed with a certain sense of style that I think I inherited from my dad. Just about the time this picture was taken, I was 5 years old. We moved to the town that I would grow up in, the place that I now call my hometown. It's called West Bridgewater, Massachusetts, 30 miles south of Boston, a small dairy farm community of about 5,000 people when I lived there, and I lived there until I was 21. This picture was taken when I was in the 1st grade, 6 years old. 6-year-old boy with the ears of a 35-year-old man. No wonder I was nervous. I was hearing everything was going on in the whole goddamn state. But I had a very normal childhood. I grew up in that house that you see behind me there. My parents still live in that house. This is my younger brother Bill, the last of the 5 Gallagher kids. This picture was taken on the day that I made my first communion. That house is at 17 Plain Street in West Bridgewater, P-L-A-I-N. And that pretty much describes my childhood. We weren't rich, we weren't poor, we didn't know we weren't rich, we didn't know we weren't poor, we just lived on Plain Street. I managed to graduate from high school in 1971 as part of the largest graduating class in the history of West Bridgewater High. 91 students graduated that year. I ranked 63rd out of 91. I was not the smartest kid in my class. I was the funniest kid in the whole goddamn high school. I was 6'2", weighed 160 pounds, and thought everybody's pants should end at their calves, apparently. When I graduated from high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but being the first male born, I got to go to college on my parents' ticket, so I went to college. When I graduated from college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I spent the next year traveling around the country with a friend of mine. It was 1975. We were looking for ourselves. Don't know where we thought we would find ourselves, but we lived in the back of his Jeep for a year. We did odd jobs when we ran out of money, and I spent the bulk of that year trying to stay as high as I possibly could. I am not proud of that fact at this point in my life, but it is the truth, and everything that I tell you tonight is the truth. I'm probably loaded in this picture, since I found that hat in a gutter and I'm wearing it. The day that I got back from this trip, I met the person I would eventually marry. Her name is Jean Dunn. Jean and I met on July 2nd, 1976, and we were married in August of 1980. We were teaching school at the time. We were both elementary school teachers. I had started doing stand-up in Boston when stand-up comedy became real hot and clubs were opening up on every corner. I did it to supplement my income on weekends. Then I started working more and more days during the week until eventually I quit my teaching job, expecting that I would do stand-up for 4 or 5 years, and when the craze ended, I would go back to teaching. I never went back to teaching. I got more and more stand-up work, and then in 1984, I moved to Los Angeles to be a star. I wanted to be a big star. My dad, who I'm with outside his house, thought I was an idiot. I quit a tenured teaching position to go into show business. But I did all right when I lived in LA. I appeared on some television shows, had a couple of small movie roles. My career was starting to take off. Then in 1987, I moved here to Sacramento to host a television show for Channel 3. The show was going to be my big break, everybody told me. They were going to syndicate it. I was going to make a lot of money. I was going to be a big star. The show was canceled 9 months after it started. They didn't pay me that much money, and nobody has used the term star with my name since then. So all in all, it was an excellent career move. In 1990, during a trip to Ireland, Jean and I decided to start a family. We'd been together for a long time at this point, and as you'll see, during the course of the evening, our marriage had gone through a series of stages. But there was something about this time in Ireland that made us realize that we would be together for the rest of our lives. And so we decided to name our first son Declan, a very old Irish name that you don't often hear in this country. And we gave him that name so we would always be reminded of what Ireland meant to our relationship at that point. And on October the 13th, 1991, my son Declan was born. My wife had a great pregnancy. She had a textbook pregnancy, according to all the doctors that we worked with. She never got morning sick once. She only gained 29 pounds in the 9 months. She went to the gym every other day and worked out. She was in incredible shape. And we were old enough to really be into this. We read all the books. We went to the classes. We were going to do a natural childbirth. Natural child. Here's our plan. Jean's going to go into the delivery room, squat in the corner, have the baby, and then go finish her shift in the rice fields. Jean was in labor for 30 hours. At the end of the 30 hours, they did an emergency C-section. About 28 hours in, a doctor said to me, "Jack, we have a problem." Really? Huh. Yeah, I hadn't figured that out myself while I was watching the Today Show for the second time! Do you know what he told me the problem was? This is a quote from somebody with a medical degree. "Jack, we have a problem. His head's too big." I don't want to hear that. I'm paying a lot of money. I want to hear medical lingo, technical jargon. I would have felt much better if they said, "Jack, we have complications. He has cranius enormous." So this guy decides to do the C-section, and now he's all excited, and he's yelling. Before this, he'd been calming me down, and he just kept saying to me for like a day, "Let her have the baby. It's a natural process. Women have been doing this for ages. Let her have the baby." He decides to do the C-section. He's screaming at people. "Get a surgeon on the phone. Book an operating room. Prep her up here. I want her downstairs in a half hour. Let's go." He whips around to me and says, "You, put on a surgical gown. Meet us downstairs." What are you like, one guy short? No, seriously, did somebody call in sick because I'm a comedian? They let me watch them operate on my wife. I didn't know you could do this. Suddenly I'm standing right next to the table that she's lying down on, and I'm telling you, the entire time I'm thinking, this is wrong. There has got to be some insurance regulation against this. Oh, for God's sake, they make you stand behind that yellow line when they're working on your car. And she's laying down with that big curtain in front of her, so she can't see what's happening. She keeps saying to me, "What are they doing?" I'm not telling you what they're doing. Because they'd cut her open. Yeah, sure. And then he went in to get the baby. He went in, yeah. And he'd done this before, because he went in. At which point she said, "What's he doing now?" "I think he's looking for his keys." "You feel a little tickle in your throat, do you?" Say hello to the doctor. So I'm leaning over the curtain and I'm talking to her and I'm making some jokes, you know, because that's what I do when I'm nervous. And the doctor said, "Stand up, Dad, here it comes." So I stood up and he's pulling his arm out. And his hand comes out and he's holding a head. a little head with this black curly hair. And he twists his hand around, and there's a face with this nose that's exactly my wife's nose. And I just, and I had that moment. I had that moment that everybody in this room who has kids has had. The first time you see your kid. The most amazing moment of your life. And if you don't have kids, I'm not going to bother trying to explain it because you don't care anyway. You just have to wait because suddenly you're on the other side of the fence. And I just, oh, Gene said, what is it? I said, it's I don't know, it's got your nose. We didn't know what sex it was. I said, it's got your nose, it looks just like you. And they pulled it out and the doctor said, well, congratulations, it's a boy. And I just, I was so happy. I cannot remember ever being so happy in my life. Gene was okay, it was out, it was a boy, Declan was here, it was just, and the plan had been, they would cut the cord, they would give the baby to Gene, and the three of us would get to know each other while they cleaned her up, and then they would take him away and do the paperwork and footprints and all that stuff. Well, in the course of this time, 30 hours, I forgot the plan. I just forgot the plan. So they cut the cord and they took the baby away and they took him over to a cart that about that big, had wheels on it, a couple of nurses working on him. And I was saying to Gene, I was just, you know, he's big. He was big. He was 9.5 pounds. Yeah, 9.5 pounds with a 9-pound head, so he did have a big head. Yeah. It's basically a head on a stick, you know. And Gene kept saying, where's the baby? And I said, they're cleaning him up. They're cleaning him up. I said, he's so beautiful. I'm going to go take a look, and I'll be right back. And I went over to this table that they had taken him to, and I looked over the shoulders of the nurses, and I got a good look at him for the first time, and I realized that he wasn't breathing, that he was blue, and he was turning more blue, and he was making this horrid little choking sound, and I froze. And one of the nurses turned around and saw me and said to me very sternly, this is not as serious as you think it is. And so I said, okay, all right, you know, and I took a step back and I thought, you've been up for a day and a half, you're tired, let them do that. Probably happens all the time. Let them do their job. Before I could even think that, they had pushed him out of the room through the doors and started running down this hall, and I just started running after them, and I chased them down the hall. And one of the nurses was screaming for people to get out of the way. And we wound up in the intensive care unit, and they started trying to make him breathe. And I fell apart. Because this never occurred to me. This was never an option that he wouldn't breathe. And I still now, 7 years later, remember this feeling I had of wanting to pick him up. I swear to you, I thought that if I pick him up and hold him, he'll start to breathe because I'm his dad. But I couldn't get close to him. There were more doctors and nurses and whoever, and they put a mask on his face and they put a line in his leg, and I stood back against a radiator and I cried. I started to weep. I never cried in public. I cry at red lights now. I can't go 2 days without my eyes filling up. Shortly after this event, it occurred to me that I might not have the amount of time I thought I would have to explain the things I want to explain to my kids over the natural progression of time. So I started writing letters to Declan. And I've been writing them for 7 years now. They've changed. They're not the same. The first ones I wrote were full of all this flowery prose about how we were going to conquer the world and be such a great family. And now they're different because he's 7. And, you know, the bloom is still on the rose, but there are snails in the garden occasionally. The purpose of the letters is to let my kids know who I am while they're growing up. I want my kids to know the type of person I was when they were 6 and 7 and 10 and 12. See? Because I'm going to be different now than I will be when they're 20. And I want them to know why I'm thinking the things I'm thinking, why I'm making the decisions, what hurts me, what makes me feel joy. I want them to know the person that is their father. I want them to have a record at some point that will let them know what brought us to where we are as a father and a son.